Well, welcome everybody. Another fantastic episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. We've got a fantastic show and a fantastic guest. The very energetic and charismatic Steve Jensen is here. How are you, Steve?
G'day, mate. How you going?
Very well.
Lovely introduction.
Oh, I haven't finished yet. Now, who is Steve, everybody out there? Steve Jensen is the founder and CEO of Impact Training Corporation and National Sales Academy, specializing in teaching people cutting-edge sales, communications, leadership, and public speaking skills. Steve has been involved in and building businesses for over 3 decades and is regarded as a world leader in sales and communication training, mentoring, and implementation strategies, and has helped to positively influence people's lives and their business profits. Steve is also the founder of My Mentor Coach and recently the Sales Authority Club and podcasts, which has helped boost the profits of thousands of people, businesses, and corporate companies in Australia and around the world. People from all around the globe have doubled and tripled their sales income as a direct result of what they've learned from Steve. After all, Steve says, there's not a lot in business that more sales can't fix. How you doing, Steve? How was that?
Terrific, mate. And you've got it down pat, mate. You're a pro.
Well done, mate. Well, it's going to be a great episode, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the psychology and the nuances of sales in the new age. And we're going to be chatting about the psychology of sales, how it's changed, where do salespeople need to upskill to stay relevant, and much, much more. But before we get into that, I thought maybe let's hand it over to you, Steve, to just give us a little bit of an insight into your journey and, how you've got to where you are, what you kind of specialize in, and then I'd love to do some questions and answers with you as well.
Oh, look, I'm 62 now, so I can't take too much of your time. But I was actually, born in Hong Kong, and mum and dad are English. So I lived until I was 11 years of age in Hong Kong, and we immigrated to Australia from England. So I'm one of those 10-pound poms.
Fantastic. What a fun childhood.
That was terrific. And Dad was an ocean mariner. He was a captain of ships. So we used to get on lots of lovely ships on a regular basis. And my mum and dad were quite outgoing people. And when we came to Australia, it was a very different type of culture from what I was brought up in. And I had to mix in with the Australian culture, which was very different. And it took me down a track to actually get more involved with sports. And I got really involved in sports as a young fella. And then I went out into the big wide world, into computers and into banking. But my passion was actually in doing exercise. And again, long story short, I was went through the banking and doing all those sorts of things. But then it wasn't me, and I decided that I would get started in a gym. Oh. And David Simmons and I combined forces, and we opened one of the very first health clubs in Australia.
No
and
way.
It was and that grew. Yeah. But what came with it was I was actually fascinated by the psychology of communication. So I went and did a doctorate in neural order, and I was actually just loved listening to how the people communicated and how triggers worked. But really, back in the olden days, even before NLP became, let's say, popular. So we put it into a model. I like putting things into models because I say trust the process, and then put the soft skills in place. So we actually created a very strong model based on communication. And then we introduced the soft skills. Right. And it was just a fun thing to do because, back in those days, that the business of health and fitness was very small. It was just a lot of fun and training, and people were joining the gym. But it became quite, how can we say, competitive. And we had ups and downs in that industry. And we grew quite large. But we were always successful because we never sold anything. We actually spoke to people and used these processes, which became easy. Right. It was easy to have a conversation, help people. So we had this mentality, even back then, from selling to helping. And it's actually come full circle now, Darren. And so I stayed in that industry for quite some time. Then I sold the business and then went and helped another one. And then I decided that I would help other businesses in that industry and put process. So it's streamlined over the years. As you can see, it's usually quite clunky. Then it became a lot more streamlined. And then we created a system and a process that we could pass on. And then I combined them with soft skills. So we did it in tandem. We created a process, and then once the process is done, and you got to learn the hard skills first. Hard skills are the process, the tools, and then combine it with the soft skills, the delivery. You can't do the delivery before the hard skills. And that's when I opened ITC, Impact Training Corporation, and we were there to help people.
Great. And
then it quickly dovetailed into corporate, where we started working with businesses like Mazda and Channel 9 and Microsoft and those sorts of companies.
Right.
And then we got a great opportunity with an international company called Les Mills, and I went overseas to help them do that, and we got the international account. And from those people, I created agencies overseas, and my business partner in London is Brent, and we opened ITC in Europe, and then Paulo Acquil over in Brazil. So we went through Europe, and we started to train and modify sales cycles all around the world. And it all came from little Australia. So there's a little bit of background of what we do.
Fantastic. And I love the way you put it. Make it nice and simple. Build the structure or the process first, and then put the soft skills in place to deliver and execute. It's just so simple.
If you don't have a process, you're going to come unstuck. And people always have their goals. They have their goals. They need to make X amount of sales, and they say, "Oh, well, I've got to get all the sales." Well, we know that you have to have a budget and have your KPIs. But if you trust the process and just follow the process, and then you'll get the outcome if the delivery is authentic. And authenticity is something that's critical with the soft skills.
Definitely. That's fantastic. Now that kind of leads me to my first question, which is always an interesting one and something that I find myself talking about all the time. I mean, these days, the psychology of sales has changed. The behavior of the buying behavior has changed. People are more savvy. Customers are more educated. They know what they want. I mean, how has that changed over the years from when you first started?
Look, back in the olden days when we sold something, it was you got in there, you had a big offer, and it was a lot to do with the offers that you had, buy one, get one free and all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah. The deals,
all the deals. Yeah. And they used to even call them, "Did you do a deal?"
It was all about the close the deal as well, wasn't it? Yeah. Close the deal, go for the close, all that kind of stuff.
And as we progress, as you correctly said, everyone's a lot more savvy now. And because people are more savvy, they expect the sales professional to be even more savvy.
True. And
back in the olden days, we used to say, "Oh, build massive rapport with somebody so they become your friend." Now, that's not the case. You build enough rapport.
That's
true. And the word enough is enough to say we've connected and there's a conversation taking place. You don't have to overkill. But then you have to then do something else. And once you actually have enough rapport, you find and it shortens the sales cycle. People don't want drawn out sales cycles anymore.
True.
It needs to be shortened. And by the way you shorten it is by making sure that after you've built enough rapport, you are deemed as an expert and are seen as being a little bit different to the competitor. Okay. This has to be done early, not later.
So you have to build trust quickly and build and differentiate yourself quickly.
Early. Now we have a red and green brain model where we have the neocortex and the limbic brain modalities.
Yep.
If you're then going to be different early, that's going to be red. So they'll be thinking about it logically.
Uh-huh. What
we then need to do is then prove that we are the expert by then say, well, how can we help you? So it's got to be very quickly, we've got to find the compelling argument. The compelling argument is once we've got enough rapport, we deemed as we've done this before, we've helped a lot of people here. Let's be more specific about your problem. See, here we have a little saying, fix the big problem, get the big bucks.
I like it.
So find out their problem. So you get permission to find out what their challenges are. If you are a solution and they know, like, and trust you,
yep,
you then have permission to present your solution. Back in the olden days, we just used to talk, show them the solution, give them a strong offer. It doesn't work that way. You've got to get enough rapport, make sure you are a little bit different, find the compelling argument, and then be the solution. But before you are the solution, this is the big rock. You've got to teach them something that they don't know that will help them fix the problem. We call it inking. I never knew that.
Okay,
so you
like it.
Stuff that they don't know. They go, wow, I never knew that.
Yep.
You say, yeah. And if it's a USP, you say, well, the only guys that do it that way. How good's that?
Gotcha.
So we all of a sudden teach them something that they don't know that shows you are an expert, and it differentiates you in the marketplace as long as you're giving them a solution. And then your explanation demonstration, we've changed it in the last, 18 months.
Right.
We've gone from touring, explanation, or demo to a proofing model.
Right.
Forget about doing a tour or do an explanation or a demonstration. Prove what you said is true. In other words, you found the compelling reason, say, we can fix it. Now I've got to prove that I can fix it. In other words,
how do you do that?
The only way to actually prove it is to either show them what you've done in the past,
yep,
which is done historically. We have a thing called blue sky. Blue sky starts with B and S. Right. A lot of salespeople in the old days say, oh, you'll get this and you'll have that and it'll be terrific. Now, the number one motivator in human behavior is to avoid a pain, a discomfort,
right,
a worry.
Yes.
So if we establish that primary objective, prove that we're a little bit different and we can fix it, we then need to prove what we said is true by testimonial, historical data, Beautiful. What you've achieved in the past,
yep,
and just say, hey, that's what we've done in the past. And what have you done in the past, the last 2 years, 1 year?
Yep.
We can only talk about what's real, which is in the past.
Gotcha.
Whatever is in the future is just hope.
And this is really interesting because a lot of this stuff you can almost do even before the customer gets to talk to you via your website, via your marketing material. A lot of that's done pre the engagement.
Correct. It's called a reverse sales model. Yep. By going to, we call it authorization. It's not a real word. It's one that we made up. It's right. called becoming the authority.
Gotcha.
Before they show up, gotcha. By being different and teaching them stuff that they don't know. So they can't get that anywhere else. So when they turn up, all you need to do is confirm it and then prove what you said is true. Then the close becomes quite simple.
Yep. They almost close naturally. They close for you if you've done all the pre-work.
That's right. Well, when you do your explanation and demonstration and prove it, you just need to test the temperature a little bit. Is everything what you're looking for and everything's good? Would you like me to show you to proceed?
Yep.
Now, if they've created value, and value is the major thing here, value and convenience are the two holy grails now in sales.
Gotcha.
Creating value
and convenience.
Expertise and convenience.
Yep.
Once you get that convenience, you then get permission to close. Now, as long as you've created value, your price, you're not going to get a price objection as long as you close in green brain. So you ask them, tell them about the money, then ask them if they're excited, they're a bit more relieved now. That will turn on the green brain, which doesn't turn on, that turns off the red brain, which means they can make a decision.
Gotcha. And what was the difference between the red brain and the green brain again?
The red brain is called the neocortex. It's where they take in data. In other words, anything that's logically orientated.
Gotcha.
You know, your price, your size, your location. That's all the brain goes into analyzing.
Okay.
It actually turns off the decision-making processes because the limbic brain doesn't work at the same time as the neocortex. So we call it the red and the green brain. The red brain is the logical brain and the green brain is the limbic brain where all decisions are made. So if you're closing a sale and you say, how'd you like to pay for that? let's get the contract done. That's red brain. People balk at it and they go, oh, I need to go away and think about it, shop around, ask my brother, see my wife.
Right. Gotcha.
But if we say, let's do the paperwork, are you a bit more excited about this? You're a bit more relieved now, John? Yes. Well, let's celebrate. That's green.
Gotcha.
That just turns on the decision-making process.
Gotcha.
Instead of actually having the decision-making process turned off.
Bingo.
By the way, if the red brain is on, the green brain is off by way of definition. So there will be no decision.
Gotcha. So it's really understanding what you need to activate at what time in the process.
Yes. And there should be on and off, on and off. You go red early with your USPs, unique selling point.
Okay. Interesting. Yep. I love it. All right.
This shortens the sales cycle down quite dramatically. So you get your proofing. You don't have this big on long-winded presentation. You just prove what you said is true, and then you show them value, and then ask them to get involved. It shortens the sales cycle much more effectively.
Beautiful. I mean, and a lot of this stuff there's always a marriage between sales and marketing. So a lot of this initial pre-work and becoming an authority is done via content and content marketing. But today we're going to talk more about sales because that's your little sweet spot at the moment. So I just kind of want to get a sense of, obviously you train salespeople and you're dealing with salespeople and you're helping salespeople become more effective. Can anybody become a great salesperson, or do you think there are some inherent traits that make some people better than others as salespeople?
That's a question I get asked quite regularly, and it is a minefield. But I've been doing this for a very long time, close to 30 years. So when it comes down to it, anybody can learn sales.
Right.
However, and there's a bit, not a but, it's just a however. Let's just have put it into context for you.
Yep.
If there is a desire to actually become a professional communicator,
yep,
and really be excited about your product and or service, and you're prepared, and especially in this day and age, Darren, to do the work, learn the conversation, learn the process, and then do the practice, you can. But there are some people that have more of a drive to want to have that desire.
Okay.
Some people want to do sales. Highly analytical people can be incredibly good salespeople, but they really do empathize with, let's say, a procrastinatory objection.
Right.
Sometimes someone will think about it and they say, yeah, I would too, and then they don't ask for the sale. Gotcha. So you need to teach them how to overcome that protocol.
Right.
There are some people that we call them intuitives. They can listen and talk and be excited about things, and that's great. But I believe anyone can learn if they have the desire, have the up-to-date tools, and then do the practice. Perfect. People, even the best of the best, if they don't do their practice, it's not going to work.
That's true.
Gone are the days of winging.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And EQ obviously plays a part in this too. You know? Look,
EQ versus IQ is a lovely debate.
Yes.
They say the best salespeople in the world, the ones that have the highest ROI and people just buy from them effortlessly, are the people with a good IQ, but they've got EQ in abundance.
Right.
If the EQ is low, in other words, their ability to come up with a little smarty pants remark or think on their feet, some people will struggle. So EQ does play a big part in that. And if someone's stilted in their communication just because of that low EQ, then that would be something that would stop someone being as successful, even if they had desire.
Gotcha. I suppose, and when I hear EQ, I also hear empathy, and being empathetic to your customer and to the objectives and the issues and the problems and the solutions they need, and the situations they're in, is really a huge part of being a salesperson, is listening and being empathetic. And I suppose that EQ feeds into that. Would you say that's correct?
Yes, it's empathy has to be there.
Excellent. So, Steve, another very, very interesting question these days, obviously with the use of social media and digital media, and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. Where does digital and social sales fit into face-to-face sales?
Look, it's a very poignant question, because at the end of the day, marketing, a lot of marketing is being done via social media. And as we were talking about earlier, yeah, becoming the authority, you can actually become the authority within 5 to 7 weeks. Wow. By getting out on doing your Facebook Lives, giving out great content, and so forth.
That's very interesting. 5 to 7 weeks to become an authority, or to build a credibility.
Correct. So
I like that.
The way you do that is it's a very simple process. What you do is you get your 5 USPs.
Yep.
Make sure you can say you're the first, you're the biggest and the strongest.
Yep.
You're going to get a number of topics. We would suggest 2 to 3 topics a week, for the first 5 to 7 weeks.
Yep.
And you go onto Facebook, or you might go into YouTube Live, or wherever you like to do it, and you do some great content. So you can put all your text up and do some videos, and be really generous with what you're teaching to show you are an expert, and make sure you include your USPs. So say I said 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, it's going to be, and same on Friday. So all your friends come on and they start to see you. You start doing this for a period of time with great content and so forth, by showing them that you're an expert. You then do a thing called Live Leap. Yep. And you can actually then do your broadcasts across a number of different platforms at the same time. And then what you then do is you then share it with your friends and so forth, and then push out your content. Over about 6 to 7 weeks, you'll get anywhere between 200 to 1,000 to 2,000 views. And after you've done that, take that video, you can just download it and put it onto YouTube. And after you've got that 5 to 7 weeks of 3 videos, you can then have an opportunity where you have a call to action. Why don't you download this, or why don't you have that, or even a tripwire, get it for $5 or whatever the case may be. And that allows you to be having a very, very quick perceived value, because you've got to be seen on a regular basis. Otherwise, people will forget you when it comes to the digital marketing and into sales. If you're not there regularly, giving good content and showing you're an expert, not just trying to sell them something, but giving them stuff and being generous, and they know, like, and trust you, then you can market and ask them to buy.
Gotcha. Fantastic. So that's where that marriage comes in. It really kind of falls into the marketing side of it, using social media and digital to help you market and become a credible expert and an authority in a short period of time, even 5 to 7 weeks. And then the physical face-to-face is more about the sale. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of people now are gravitating on to get people to buy online. So they have opt-in boxes. So It's an offer too good to refuse. It's a little bit red brain, but it's also fear of missing out. So people will buy online. So it's got to be good enough content. The offer has to be strong, and it has to fix something.
Gotcha.
But the one thing that you'll find that with digital sales and opt-in and buying, you've got to make sure that your content and the video or whatever goes with it is of good quality. Now, we do a lot of work with belly-to-belly businesses, so they need to book in to see people. So I actually had an interview myself with someone just recently, and they were saying that one of the best ways of increasing the buy-in from the marketing to the sale is to get someone to buy something that's a small value, which then gets them to want to book the appointment.
Right.
Now this is, I know top funnels and so forth is old school, but one of the things that is the big problem, Darren, in sales is getting a lead, an email, trying to contact that lead. If you don't contact that lead within 1 minute, you get 7 to 11 dials.
Wow.
Then we got to have a thing called a matrix, where you leave a voicemail message and call them a couple more times with SMSs and audio voice message. It becomes tedious.
Definitely.
So the matrix of call to contact, then contact to booked appointment.
Yep.
And then booked appointment to show.
Yep.
And then from show to sale. Now, in the digital world now, what you can do is, if you have a strong offer where they'll buy something of some type of value, you then have a little video say, thanks for buying that, Darren. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Just pop down below, book your time to come and see us. We're going to take you through and do this. This is going to be fantastic value, and we'll see you soon.
Right.
Bye for now. They go down the bottom. There's usually 3 to 5 days where people are hottest.
Right.
We call it a 3-day loop.
Right.
So you've got 3 days they can book in to come to see you if it's available. They then push the button to book a time to see you. Now, because they paid a little bit of money, which has significant value, now you then get a booked appointment without having call to contact to booked appointment. So all that matrix is taken away with the digital space. Now, the other thing that changes here is now the person is booked in. There's been no conversation with the human being. However, they've seen good content, but the person they're coming to see doesn't know what their problems are. Remember, we talked about that earlier.
That's right.
So the emphasis now comes on to the confirmation call. Nowadays, people just send text messages and don't even do a call.
Yep.
But now the emphasis in the new age of selling is you now got to contact Darren. Well, Darren's paid money. He's also booked on a chat to see you. So more than likely to say he'll take the call. So he takes the call, and then you've got to find the compelling reason for them to come. So you build a little bit of rapport. You say you're going to help them, teach them something that they don't know very quickly, and then confirm they're coming in. Now, that's how it's become back-ended, and it's reduced a whole lot of telephone calls. So that's how the digital component of sales has changed quite dramatically, and it will continue to evolve over the next few years.
Wow, I love it. It's almost streamlined and made things more efficient in a way, and cut down that 7 to 11 touch points and dials before you actually get to the real serious stuff.
That's absolutely right. And that call to contact and contact to booked appointment, there's a whole lot of skills in that. There's a lot of telephone work, but also a lot of people don't do telephone work very well. It's one of the worst skills in the sales arena globally.
That's a
There's
skill
not
in
enough
itself.
training, and it's really poor. So if we're getting on the phone and we're trying to contact them, and then we do a crummy telephone call, we're going to have a low show rate.
That's right.
If the person buys and clicks the button and books themselves in, can you see how it's shortening the sales cycle?
Yeah, this is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Wow. And obviously the execution of that is a skill in itself, the digital execution of that. So it's an art form as well.
And then we can then do a great job when we do our meet and greet, go through the process, use your soft skills to then ask them to buy, and you should inspire the person to buy and not have to close.
Gotcha. Very, very good. Now, salespeople moving forward, obviously things have changed already so much. Where do you think things will change even further? And how do salespeople what do salespeople need to do to upskill and continue to make sure they're going to be relevant in the future?
Look, I'm glad you asked that question, because I was just at a conference the other day, and one of my presentations was some of the 5 biggest mistakes people are making. And one of the biggest mistakes is they're not updating their sales process. Moving forward, if you're in a business right now, if your listeners are listening and they haven't updated their sales process,
Yep.
In other words, reverse engineered it,
Yep.
and said, well, where have we modified it? And then go to the tools. Now, there needs to be telephone tools, or emails, or your process or demonstration or proofing. What's your price presentation like? Now, I go to businesses all the time, all around the world.
Yeah.
And these are, they don't have anything that's up to date, and that wondering why their conversion is poor. People are asking for more leads. They don't need more leads. They just need to make sure their conversions are more effectively. So that's it's a big rock. Definitely. And if they don't actually concentrate on the conversions, and conversion doesn't mean just closing the sale. It's getting that person to come in and then getting them to the next phase of the sale, their conversions.
Yes.
And so that's a big rock as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing that I believe, people have been talking about it for a very long time, and I spoke about it earlier, but understanding how to do a presentation which encompasses your unique selling points and be perceived as the expert and different is now mandatory. It used to be a good idea.
Yep. Oh, yes.
It's mandatory now. And unfortunately, most people don't know how to do it. So those are some things that are really critical to be able to get the tools, shorten your sales cycle, and get to the point where when you're doing your explanation demonstration, like I said earlier, proving two things. All you have to do, the human brain is quite interesting. You prove two things are true and they'll believe you.
Yep.
And then your close. The close needs to be almost a given. And don't have to spend a lot of time there. You can do assumptive or prescriptive type asking, but remember to ask. And most people will be inspired to buy and not having to close the sale. But
Perfect.
that's how it's changed quite dramatically.
So really moving forward, salespeople need to upskill and continue to stay on top of new ways of developing their execution and their softer skills, as well as their process. And part of that process is actually embracing social and digital sales or marketing and sales process as well.
Yes. And having a sales and closing strategy. A lot of business I go to, I say, what's your sales strategy? And they'll fluff it for a bit. And then I say, what's your closing strategy? And they can't tell me. Again, it needs to be shortened and we've got to be able to ask for the sale. A lot of people don't ask. And that needs to be practiced. And the last thing I want to add to this, Darren, is anyone that's any good at anything practices.
100%.
Sales professionals think they can just wing it because they've done it for the last 2 years. I mean, I don't know any athlete or anyone's any good at anything that doesn't do any practice. Now, we take the word role play out of it because everyone goes, yeah, I don't like role play. So we now call it PDR. Practice, drill, rehearse. And funnily enough, people accept that a little bit. Have you done your PDR today? Oh, yep, just about to do it. Do role play.
100%. You can't get better at anything or be successful at anything without practicing daily. You know?
Absolutely.
And the more you practice, the better you become. It's just like anything else. You're not born a natural. I mean, it's interesting when people say you're a natural salesperson. What do you think that means?
They just say that to somebody who is a chatterbox.
Yes.
And they're really not a born salesperson. They're just trying to convince you to get on. Come on. You're a born salesperson because I just want to shut you up and I'll do it. Yeah. I don't believe that is a salesperson. Salesperson needs to equally be able to inspire, but also listen 100%. And really hear the person and be present. That authenticity, that conversation, and not a sale, is critical. And when they say you're a born salesperson, I think it's just because someone talks a lot, you know.
And I've also heard that great analogy or that great saying, you're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should be listening double the amount of time that you should be speaking. I love that.
Absolutely.
So, and again, that's about empathy and credibility and building trust and value. It's all about listening as well and making the other person feel like you're with them on the journey with them. That's the key.
One way to teach people how to listen is quite an interesting exercise. You say you should listen. Everyone says yeah, okay, mum, okay, dad, okay, boss. The way to actually listen is to teach the person and just tell them some stuff. And after you've heard 2 things, tell me about this, Steve, blah blah blah. Blah, blah, blah. And as Steve goes to the next day, so can I excuse me for a moment? I just want to recap that and write it down. And I did this and this, just like you've done. You've listened, then you recap it. Now you teach a sales professional to recap and make sure they write it down. If they recap and write it down, they'll start to listen. It'll become a habit.
Yes.
It's a really great way of doing a debrief and teaching people to listen, because most people say they do, but we know they don't. But if you stop, write a few things down and recap it, that's a listening.
And I think when you're in a sales process as well, and an exchange, if you do that, that's how you also build trust and credibility, because people think he's actually listening to me. He actually wants to make sure that he's understood what I'm saying. That's fantastic. Otherwise, we're just running off on a million tangents and we don't even stop for a second.
So true. That's absolutely correct. And people say you got to build rapport. I don't subscribe to that. I think you need to do rapport. You need to build it and then do it. In other words, bring the conversation and bring the things into somewhere else in the conversation, not just at the beginning, so you can sell them something.
Perfect.
Make sure that you use it throughout the conversation because you're genuinely interested. Be interested before you become interesting.
I love it. I love it. Excellent. Well, look, Steve, this has been absolutely fascinating. Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with or add in terms of your insights or strategies or tactics people can put in place straight away? Or
look, I think you've covered everything. I mean, we could go on for hours, but we've hit the big rocks. We've actually spoken about what's changed in the psychology over recent times. We've spoken about a little bit about the social media and if salespeople are born or whether they can be created.
Good.
It could be a debate for a few hours, and then wrapping up with what the salespeople have to do to be successful. I think we've covered a ton of stuff in a short period of time. So, excellent. Well done.
Excellent. Well done to you. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
Look, it's easy. Just go to impacttraining.net. So it's impact-training.net, or they could jump onto LinkedIn, just Steve Jensen, or even on Facebook in the Sales Success Club. That's a free training that I do as a Facebook group. It's called the Sales Success Club. Every Saturday morning, I go and do training. There's tons of tools and so forth. So if they'd like to see me there and reach out, best way to do it.
Perfect. And just so people know as well, you come in and you consult and teach people and run courses, but you also have online video training for people as well, do you?
Yes, we have our in-house training, which is our inner circle, where we're all done for you. We go into the business, we create the tools, upgrade them, and then we train the teams and support the top end. We usually do that each month, and we have a support mechanism between that. Plus, we also have our Sales Authority Club, as you mentioned earlier. It's a blended process where we do online training. We've got a full video training that they can utilize for their team on a regular basis, and we then have our quarterly events where we teach the soft skills together. So it's a bit of a hybrid. That's called the Sales Authority Club.
Lovely. Well, Steve, thank you once again. It's a fascinating episode and something that I'm going to listen to more and more again, to understand even the nuances between the red and the green brain and all the little steps in the process that you outlined. So thank you again for joining. And
it's my pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me on, Darren. I love your questions. They were terrific. Wish more people ask those sorts of questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And for all the listeners out there, stay tuned. We've got lots more coming up in the next few weeks on the podcast. So bye for now.